Insurance fraud in the UK costs more than £1.2 billion a year. That's more than £3 million a day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding more than £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing a fraudulent claim every 5 minutes. Armed with the latest fraud-busting technology, including covert surveillance systems, sophisticated data analysis techniques, and specially trained fraud investigators, they're catching these chancers red-handed. Instead of getting away with it, more and more of these fraudsters are being caught out and claimed and shamed. Today on Claimed and Shamed, a man who lost his brother to COVID is jailed after trying to cash in life insurance he'd acquired in his dead sibling's name.
He'd taken out 4 life insurance policies in total to cover his brother's death. Those policies actually amounted to a total benefit payout of over £500,000.
And a chancer making a bogus claim is caught out on number plate recognition cameras driving his car when it should have been off the road.
We knew categorically that the claimant's vehicle had actually moved because we were able to identify through ANPR evidence that his vehicle had been driven.
Time and again on Claimed and Shamed, we see fraudsters finding all sorts of cunning ways to try to play the system in order to trick insurance companies into paying out huge sums of money for spurious claims. In today's show, there are scammers who take advantage of a family tragedy, who are willing to fake sophisticated travel documents and even death certificates to get a payout. In one instance, there's even a dodgy firm of lawyers getting in on the action. Our first case crosses international borders when the death of a man in Romania leads to bogus life insurance claims being made in the UK. When the UK came to a stop in March 2020, most of us were told to stay at home. The pandemic had an enormous impact on everyone. Holidays were cancelled, weddings postponed, and jobs were lost. As a result, claims flooded into insurance companies, and in 1 year alone, COVID-related claims in the UK totalled almost £12 million. In amongst all the legitimate claims, the scammers saw COVID as an opportunity, including one who made a high-value claim to Aviva.
Our customer had taken out a life insurance policy in July 2020, and 4 months later we were contacted by our customer's brother to explain that his brother was sadly deceased and he died in Romania as a result of complications of a COVID-19 infection.
Even though the 38-year-old man had passed away in Romania, he'd taken out his policy with the UK-based Aviva. After his death, his brother got in touch.
A claim was submitted in November 2020, so that was about 8 days after the customer had died.
Jacqueline felt this was soon to be in contact at such a difficult time. But there was a lot of money at stake.
As a result of his brother being deceased, he was calling us to claim the life insurance proceeds of £100,000.
Although he was making the claim, the beneficiary of the policy was his brother's widow, who had been left alone with 4 children. Whilst these were tragic circumstances for the family out in Romania, there was something about the timing of the claim which didn't feel right.
When customers take out life insurance policies, we don't usually expect them to claim within a few months of taking that policy out. This can sometimes mean that perhaps there was a medical history or something that we weren't aware of before the policy was taken out, and that means we just look a little bit more closely at the claim.
This meant that Jacqueline began digging for more information, which would corroborate details of the claim.
After we were notified of the claim, we got evidence of death, which was a medical certificate from the hospital in Romania. His brother explained to us that the customer had passed away on the 10th of November. When we got the documentation and we looked carefully, there was actually a discrepancy in the date of death, which was on the medical certificate from the hospital. And that actually said the 8th of November, which is obviously 2 days different from what the brother said.
There could have been a number of reasons why the claimant got the date of his brother's death wrong.
The 2-day discrepancy between the date that the customer died and the date we were told they died wouldn't necessarily raise suspicions, although we would expect customers to, something as memorable as a date of death is usually a date they can recall. They might be going through grief and they might be confused and they might have just got the question wrong, but actually it might also mean that things aren't quite adding up. Where facts don't add up, we do need to have a closer look.
With a family in mourning, it was important to give the claimant the benefit of the doubt at this stage, so Jacqueline had to tread carefully whilst she took a closer look at the claim. Her first step was to contact the policyholder's widow to find out more details about her husband and to get her permission to contact the hospital where he had died.
We contacted the claimant to say, could we contact the widow of our policyholder to get a little bit more information, which included clarifying whether her husband had any pre-existing medical conditions before taking the policy out, but also to get the details of the hospital and the doctor that treated her husband in Romania before he passed away. In order to get some information about what had actually caused the death, we wanted to contact the doctor just to verify that information and make sure that it was just an honest mistake in submitting that paperwork.
And at first, things seemed to be above board.
After we'd sent an email, we got an email back with the claim form and the medical consent for us to approach the doctor in Romania, and that was signed by the widow of our policyholder. Once we got that consent back, we were able to actually use a Romanian translator to contact the hospital and speak to the doctor about the causes of death and when the customer had been admitted and when they had sadly passed away, to verify that medical information that we had received.
And that's when the claim really started to unravel. The hospital confirmed the man had died, but not in November, as had been claimed when his brother tried to cash in the life policy.
We found out that he'd been admitted in the 26th of June and had died on the 9th of July, which was over a week before the policy had originally been taken out.
It looked as if the life policy had been taken out after his death. The net was starting to close in on this swindling sibling.
The conclusion we came to after speaking to the hospital was that clearly our customer couldn't have taken that policy out after he'd passed away, which made us think that the brother may have taken the policy out after his brother had passed away to try and claim on the insurance proceeds.
And what of the death certificate submitted with the incorrect date?
Speaking to the hospital, we actually found out that the doctor who had allegedly certified the document certifying the death had been off long-term sick from August 2020 right the way through to January 2021, and there was no way that he could have actually signed that documentation.
If there had been any doubt at all in Jacqueline's mind that this was a bogus claim, the brothers' online memorial page confirmed the lie.
We actually found that there was a fundraising page which had been set up by the family to raise funds after our policyholder's death. And that fundraising page was set up in July, before that policy had been taken out. We also saw on that there were photos of the headstone which had the date of death as the 9th of July, and many messages of condolences from family and friends about the loss of a loved one, again around that July time rather than November.
This was incontrovertible proof that the claimant had given the wrong date for his brother's death.
A combination of the information we found on social media and the information we'd got from speaking to the hospital in Romania really confirmed to us that our customer had actually passed away, sadly, back in July 2020 and not in November 2020, as we'd been advised by his brother.
It was time to bring in the big guns. Police officers at the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department were informed, and they launched a criminal investigation into the claimant, a 30-year-old man called Daniel Benete. What they discovered was astonishing.
When IFED took the case on, they actually discovered that Daniel Bonette had taken out 4 life insurance policies in total, of which this was one of them, to cover his brother's death. They'd taken those out after his brother had already passed away of COVID-19. Those policies actually amounted to a total benefit payout of over £500,000.
In order to take this to court, police needed documentary evidence that a fraudulent claim had been made, and so visited Daniel Bonette's home in Coventry.
They conducted a search and they found a number of fraudulent documentation, death certificates, around the date of death that we had been given in November, but also the correct documents for our customer, the deceased, his birth, marriage and death certificates.
The officers interviewed Bonette to give him a chance to explain himself, but to no avail.
When Daniel Bonette was questioned by the police, he answered no comment to all of the questions.
But they already had all the evidence needed to prove his fraudulent activity before a judge.
The case did actually go to court. Daniel Bonette was charged with 8 counts of fraud by false representation for this policy and also the other insurances that had been taken out and claimed upon. He pleaded guilty and he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment in Warwick Crown Court.
Jacqueline believes Bonette might have thought he'd get away with this scam as his brother had died abroad. But that's certainly not the case.
We are able to actually investigate claims that are made overseas, and perhaps not everybody realises that. That enables us to use people local to those territories to find out information for us, bypass some of the bureaucracy and validate those legitimate claims, but also to identify situations where perhaps things aren't what they seem.
The police also questioned the brother's widow and concluded there was no evidence that she'd been in any way involved in the scam. It may seem extraordinary to try to take advantage of such an awful event, but Jacqueline has her own theory about why.
Sadly, there are always going to be a very few unscrupulous people that will try and claim and try and get financial gain from tragic events. That's why it's really important that we're always vigilant and we look for those people to make sure that they are brought to justice for the benefit of all of our honest customers.
Later, the case of a serial scammer that proves crime doesn't pay. After trying to swindle £75,000 with fake claims for ruined holidays, this chancer found himself on a different kind of break, roughing it behind bars.
He was sentenced to 16 months imprisonment for 15 counts of fraud by false representation. He's also the subject of the proceeds of crime order, which means the police will be looking for any assets that can be seized and recovered to recoup some of the insurer's lost money.
Next, a cautionary tale about why it's important to be completely honest when submitting an insurance claim. When you've been involved in a genuine incident, it may be tempting to try to cheat the system by inflating your losses in the hope of a higher payout, or even adding fictitious items when filling in a claim form. But for those who are caught out, the consequences can be serious, with the whole claim being invalidated. Sarah Hill is a specialist lawyer who knows her way around a fraudulent claim. She was intrigued by a case an insurance company wanted her to look into, which had started with an accident that had taken place on a roundabout in London at 10 o'clock one night.
This particular case was quite unusual, actually. It was a road traffic accident, and it wasn't just one impact, it was actually 2 impacts. The claimant was heading towards a roundabout. Somebody ran into the rear of his vehicle at the roundabout. He then moved his vehicle to the side of the road in order to exchange details, and then, rather unfortunately, his vehicle was hit again in the rear by a completely different individual.
Following the 2 collisions, the male driver, whose car had taken a battering, put in a claim.
The impacts were substantial enough to cause quite significant damage to the claimant's vehicle in the region of about £3,500.
The man also wanted £1,400 for storage costs for his damaged car. and compensation in the region of £2,500 for personal injury. In total, his claim came to around £7,500. Even though the damage and personal injury seemed to be genuine, the unusual circumstances were niggling the investigators, particularly as one of the occupants of the car was no stranger to the claims procedure.
It's incredibly unlucky for him to be hit twice at the same location in a short space of time. And I think that's what initially started our investigations, actually. The circumstances, 10 o'clock of a night with 2 rear-end impacts, it looked a bit odd. There was also a passenger in the claimant's vehicle who had quite a substantial claims history, and so that also gave us some cause for concern. So all in all, we investigated the entirety of the claim.
Sarah's intelligence team started with the 2 collisions, and they both checked out. Next, attention turned to the rest of the claim, and there was a surprise in store when investigating the claim he'd made for storing his damaged car.
We knew categorically that the claimant's vehicle had actually moved, despite it being alleged to have been in storage, because we were able to identify through ANPR evidence that his vehicle had been driven.
ANPR cameras, or automatic number plate recognition cameras, read a car's number plate and save the reg details along with the location, date and timestamp of where the vehicle was filmed.
You can then plot at what time the vehicle's been driven, where it's been driven, and then look at that to see if it's consistent with what's been alleged to have been claimed.
Information collected from ANPR cameras is often uploaded to central servers. In the UK, agencies such as the police and the Department for Transport use this technology. It's also favoured by private companies which mount ANPR cameras in their car parks to check how many spaces are free and to process payments. When investigators searched for this car's registration number, they saw that during the period the car was supposed to be in storage, it had, in fact, been caught on camera.
The claimant's vehicle had miraculously been moved and driven in a local supermarket and also a local retail park.
The data which came with the photos of the car led Sarah to believe that it had been the man himself who had been driving.
The supermarket that the vehicle was identified at through the ANPR cameras and also the local retail park were very close to the claimant's home address, and it was also a good 50 minutes away from the storage yard, so it really didn't stack up.
Over a 3-day period, when the car was meant to be in storage, it had been spotted by cameras on 5 different occasions entering car parks. The photos clearly showed it was the claimant's vehicle. Even the damage from the 2 crashes on the roundabout was visible. For Sarah, these images were strong evidence that the man had put in a false claim.
ANPR cameras are an incredible tool for us, particularly where we can establish inconsistency in what's been alleged. In this particular case, obviously, the allegation was that the vehicle was incurring storage charges, yet we were able to identify that the vehicle wasn't in storage and was being moved and driven.
The ANPR evidence was put to the claimant, but instead of throwing his hands up and confessing, he said someone from the storage facility must have been driving his car without his permission. He said it couldn't have been him behind the wheel.
The reason it couldn't have been him driving the vehicle is because he was on holiday.
Being abroad at the time would put the man entirely in the clear.
When we asked him to submit evidence that he was on holiday, the tickets, the booking, he wasn't able to produce any evidence at all, and he wasn't able to produce any evidence that it had been the storage facility that had moved the vehicle either.
With confidence in the ANPR evidence, the insurer refused to pay the man for any part of his claim. However, eager to get his hands on at least some of the cash, the man tried to drop just his storage costs whilst progressing the rest of his claim through the court. This was a course of action he would later come to regret.
It went to trial and the claimant gave evidence. Despite having attempted to withdraw the dishonest element of the claim, the judge still wanted to hear in relation to that element.
The ANPR evidence was presented to the judge, who was far from impressed.
The judge found the claimant to be completely dishonest in the presentation of the storage element. He clearly hadn't had his vehicle in storage, and yet he tried to claim for £1,400 worth of storage.
The judge found the man to be fundamentally dishonest and dismissed his entire claim. The judge also ordered him to repay the insurance company's legal costs, which came to a hefty £22,000.
He had a bad day in court.
Instead of the £7,500 settlement the man had been hoping for, he now had to pay back tens of thousands of pounds. Yet, it needn't have been this way. If he'd been honest when submitting his claim, he would have had a payout.
Had the claimant not presented the fabricated storage claim, it would have been accepted that he'd sustained injury, and it's likely he would have recovered compensation for both his injury and the damage to his vehicle. Unfortunately, because he presented that element of his claim which was fabricated, the judge found under the law that he was entitled to dismiss the entirety of the claim.
This case was a real win for Sarah, who hopes that it will act as a deterrent to anyone who's considering inflating an insurance claim.
We were very happy with the outcome. We were happy with the cost order as well, and really it does send out a message that just to put one element of claim and you think you might be able to walk away from it, if one element is dishonest, it doesn't matter. You can still have the entirety of your claim assessed as being dishonest.
Still to come, the curious case of a claim made following a car crash in the name of a man who wasn't even there.
He actually made contact with our solicitors to advise that he had in fact not been involved in this accident, had not instructed the solicitors, and not been examined by a medical expert.
We see many chances here on Claimed and Shamed who put in a bogus claim or who exaggerate a claim when an opportunity comes their way. Other times, though, the investigators come up against serial criminals who set out to abuse the system from the beginning. They painstakingly plan their claims and are masters at faking documents. These crooks are harder to detect, but once the investigators are on their tails, the lawbreakers' whole house of cards will come tumbling down, and they could even find themselves heading for a stint behind bars, as in our next case. Around 500,000 travel insurance claims are paid out to holidaymakers and travellers each year. Adam Grady works for Charles Taylor, a company that manages many of these claims on behalf of insurance providers. He was asked to look at a case of a man who, in the space of 6 months, had put in not one, not two, but 4 separate travel claims.
The claimant first contacted us in October 2019 and explained that on the way to the airport, their taxi broke down. As a result of the breakdown, they missed their flight from Manchester to the US.
The claim was worth £850. To support his claim, the holidaymaker provided a report from the taxi company confirming the cab's malfunction and proof that he'd been given a refund for the whole journey.
From reviewing the documents, our claims department didn't have any concerns with the documents that were submitted, and the claim was processed for payment.
Once the claim had been settled, the man's file was put to bed. But then 2 months later, the man got back in touch to put in a second claim, as once again, he'd had bad luck whilst trying to catch a flight.
This time they were claiming that on the way to the airport, they were involved in a road traffic collision, and they missed their flight to Qatar as a result.
The holidaymaker submitted an email from the police as evidence that he'd been involved in the accident.
The email that came from the police explaining exactly what happened included the location of the incident, what time it occurred, what happened, and that the claimant was allowed to leave the scene after a short period of time. As it included the name and rank of the officer as well as their collar number, we didn't have any concerns from that. On the face of it, there wasn't anything to suggest that it wasn't anything other than genuine.
Satisfied that everything was above board, the team again settled the claim for £1,000 for the lost flight, which was the maximum the man's policy would pay out for this type of incident. Once again, Adam thought the matter was done and dusted. But it wasn't long before the seemingly hapless traveller got back in touch. This time about a rather more expensive holiday he'd missed to the United Arab Emirates.
The claimant contacted us again for a third time in February 2020 and explained that they were unable to travel on a trip to the UAE due to a fractured wrist. The claimant provided a lot of information in support of the claim. This included booking invoices for the trip, cancellation invoices, but also documents from the NHS confirming that he had suffered the fractured wrist.
The documents from the hospital included a letter outlining the man's injury and an X-ray showing his injured wrist. This claim for the cancelled trip was worth £6,622, as this high-end holiday included expensive accommodation and flights to the United Arab Emirates. Everything seemed to be above board with this claim too.
As the two previous claims were lower value and this was the claimant's first claim for cancellation, a payment was made to the claimant.
Because all the evidence the holidaymaker had supplied to support his claims appeared to be legitimate, in the space of 5 months, the man had been paid out close to £8,500 with 3 separate claims. Then, just weeks after his last claim, the man got back in touch with a 4th claim. Serious eyebrows were raised in the Charles Taylor office.
We were actually contacted by the claimant again for another cancelled trip to the UAE. They explained that the healing process on their wrist hadn't gone to plan and that they would now not be able to travel on another trip later in the month. The latest cancellation claim was worth £5,000. When considering the claimant had £6,500 a few weeks earlier, this was certainly a red flag to us.
Once again, the man had submitted what looked like bona fide paperwork to back up his latest claim. However, this time, Adam's team decided not to take it at face value and contacted the company on the letterhead. The unlucky traveller's luck was about to run out.
When we spoke with the travel agent, they told us that they had a record of the claimant. However, they said they had only ever offered quotes for holidays, that the claimant hadn't actually proceeded to confirm a booking with them.
The agent had never sold him any holiday to the United Arab Emirates. If this claim was bogus, what about all the rest? It was time to pick up the phone and put the holidaymaker through his paces. What would he say about his first 2 claims for missed flights? Starting with the one that he'd backed up with an email from the police.
And so in terms of the evidence for that incident, then, what did you get then for the evidence of the car crash?
Can't remember, to be honest.
Okay. And what happened with the other missed flight then?
I think the train was cancelled or something like that. I can't remember.
Remember, when he put in this claim, he said he'd missed his flight because his taxi had broken down. Would his memory be any better when it came to a more recent claim?
And then there was another cancellation. Who was that booking with?
Was it? I think it might have been.
Let's have a look here. I think it was. Was it?
Yeah.
He might have got the company right, but Adam was very concerned. Was this really forgetfulness, or was he being deliberately vague?
When we're interviewing claimants, if they start to avoid questions that we're answering or skirt around issues, that tends to be a red flag for us because there may be reasons to why they don't want to give you a direct answer.
Adam was now on high alert and decided to conduct a background check on the claimant. He discovered that the man had been in trouble before when he was disciplined by the Football Association for trying to sell a League Cup final ticket.
Although not directly linked to the current claim, the findings of the panel at the FA highlight a pattern of behaviour with the claimant.
Because of this and the travel agent's evidence, Adam and his team declined the man's latest claim and invoked the fraud condition on his policy. Certain that this wouldn't have been a one-off, Adam looked again at the man's previous claims and discovered they'd all been based on lies. Taxi bookings and emails had been faked, and the police confirmed the emails supposedly from them completely fabricated. They also referred the case to officers at the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department at the City of London Police, who took swift action.
The police arrested the claimant and interviewed them under caution. During the interview, they actually admitted 5 offences of fraud by false representation. As part of the investigation, the police actually seized electronic devices from the claimant and also gave them the opportunity to disclose any other offences that may have been committed. Despite being given the opportunity to admit any further offences, the claimant decided that they would say they hadn't done anything else wrong.
Not true, as when the police examined his electronic devices, they discovered another 10 high-value and very suspicious travel claims that he'd made with 6 different insurers. The man had changed his MO on these claims, however, as he hadn't used his own details on the policies.
They were actually in other people's names. This included family members and also people that the claimant knew.
This serial claimer had been on a roll, and even being put under arrest wasn't enough to put a stop to his shenanigans. He'd targeted yet another company. Adam was pretty certain the man was up to his old tricks again.
When the other insurer asked for our advice, we immediately had concerns it was the same claimant. The claim was for a cancelled trip to Turkey due to a fractured wrist. When we looked at the metadata within some of the booking documents, it had the claimant's name listed on there. And we were also able to see on the social media of the person who was named in the claim that they were actually in a different country at that time.
Adam passed this new information up the chain.
Given the ongoing police investigation regarding the offences that were known about, we contacted IFED to make them aware of the latest claim as well.
This chancer was in it up to his neck. He was charged and ordered to appear before a judge.
A trial took place at Liverpool Magistrates Court in July 2022, during which the claimant pled guilty to 15 counts of fraud by false representation.
Due to the severity of the man's offences, he was sentenced at Liverpool Crown Court a month later, where he was made to pay for his crimes.
Joshua Moorcroft was sentenced to 16 months imprisonment for 15 counts of fraud by false representation. He's also the subject of a proceeds of crime order, which means the police will be looking for any assets that can be seized and recovered to recoup some of the insurer's lost money.
27-year-old Joshua Moorcroft's attempts to defraud the insurance industry was revealed to be widespread. A total of 15 bogus travel claims at a value of more than £75,000. As well as getting a stint behind bars, the judge also ordered him to repay the money he'd received. This had been a cynical and concerted campaign to swindle tens of thousands of pounds.
The fact he used names of people he knew and also family members shows the lengths that he would go to get the money that he felt he needed. It shows contempt for friends and family, and it's involving innocent people in police investigations.
People who make fraudulent claims often do so off their own backs, but sometimes these chancers have been encouraged and helped in their wrongdoing by the very people the rest of us entrust to uphold the law and keep us safe, such as solicitors. Insurance companies call these rogues who assist in fraud professional enablers, and cases which involve them can drag on for years. Back in October 2014, a bump between 2 cars ended up resulting in 3 claims that took more than 8 years to resolve. It all started on a road in Hounslow in West London, when a car pulled away from the curb into the side of another vehicle.
We received 3 claims from the people in the claimant vehicle. 2 of them were male and 1 was female.
Matt Warren works for First Central, which insured the driver accused of pulling out into the path of the other car, causing, it seems, quite some damage.
We received personal injury claims from all 3 occupants in the claimant vehicle. At the early stage, they were all alleging to have suffered whiplash.
The driver was also claiming for vehicle damage. This would be an expensive case to settle.
The total claim value was in excess of £22,000. This was broken down as approximately £5,000 per claimant for the personal injury and costs, and just over £7,000 for the vehicle damage claim.
However, there were serious doubts about paying out on this claim from the off, because First Central's driver, that's the man who was supposed to have caused the crash, said he wasn't even moving.
Our customer reported to us that he was parked at the curbside, he was waiting to collect a friend when the claimant vehicle has collided into his parked and stationary vehicle. These circumstances were different to what the claimants were presenting, and our customer was disputing liability.
As if his differing account wasn't concerning enough, the policyholder also dropped another bombshell.
Our customer informed us that there were just 2 people in the claimant vehicle and not 3, driver and front seat passenger.
Matt was now wondering whether the third passenger, a woman who'd put in a claim for injuries, was in fact a phantom passenger.
A phantom passenger is somebody that is claiming to have been in the vehicle, submits a claim following the accident, who in fact was not in the car.
The policyholder was happy to officially back up everything he'd said in a formal written statement.
He had a good recall of the incident and came across as a credible witness, and we're therefore happy that he would be reliable.
The discrepancies were mounting up in this case, and there was something else which was niggling Matt. All 3 claimants were using the same solicitors, and this firm had form.
They're a solicitor that were well known to us and well known for being involved in fraudulent accidents and claims.
Matt also ran background checks on the claimants and found that the solicitors were not the only ones with a checkered past.
What we identified was that the driver of the claimant vehicle had quite an extensive claims history. Additionally, in quite a lot of those claims, he'd used the same solicitors as he was using in this claim. Many of those previous claims had been identified and repudiated as fraudulent claims. So that was a concern to us.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, this wasn't something the claimant driver mentioned when he went for his medical examination.
The claimant was examined by a GP and told them that he had never previously claimed for personal injury.
Funnily enough, the solicitors had arranged for the 2 male claimants to have an examination with the same GP expert on the same day to back up their whiplash claim. But they hadn't arranged for the same examination for the female passenger making a claim.
We were confident that we were dealing with a phantom occupant. Our customer had given a credible version of events in which he was adamant there was 2 male occupants and no female occupant.
With a phantom passenger added to all the other evidence Matt had gathered, this case was shaping up.
In addition to that, we had good intelligence showing that the driver of the claimant vehicle had an extensive claims history, many of which were fraudulent claims, and in most he'd used the same solicitors as he had in this case.
Matt decided he wasn't willing to pay out on this case, so he declined all 3 claims. This decision didn't go down well with the driver who wanted his payout. His solicitors issued court proceedings against First Central, which in turn instructed lawyers to defend the case. This is when the driver's enthusiasm for a legal fight seemed to wane.
As the proceedings progressed, we began to get the feeling that the driver of the claimant vehicle wasn't keen to progress his claim, as we began to receive multiple offers from them to settle the claim. Each time the offer was reducing in value, which to us suggested they weren't confident in their own case. Our instructions to our solicitors was to reject these offers and to continue defending the claim. As a consequence, the claimant decided to drop their claim entirely.
This wasn't the end of the matter, though, as next, the male passenger entered the fray.
After the driver of the claimant's vehicle dropped their claim, we then received court proceedings from the same solicitor on behalf of the front seat male passenger in the claimant's vehicle. We again instructed our solicitors to defend this claim on our behalf.
However, as the legal proceedings progressed, there was also a change in attitude from the male passenger and his solicitors, who failed to provide documents ordered by the court.
As a consequence, the claim was struck out and the claimant was ordered to pay our costs of £8,000.
First Central wanted that money back and attempted to recover the costs. But he had news for them, which Matt and the team really weren't expecting.
Whilst our solicitors were pursuing the front seat passenger from the claimant vehicle for the payment of our cost, he actually made contact with our solicitors to advise that he had in fact not been involved in this accident, had not instructed the solicitors, and had not been examined by a medical expert.
This was a shocking revelation.
The claimant believed that the solicitors were using his details in order to pursue a fraudulent claim.
His personal details had been used without his consent, and he made an application to the court to have the judgment made against him dropped.
The court heard from him and he provided evidence of his signature, which differed to the signature that was on the court documents provided by the solicitors. He confirmed he'd never been to the accident location and that he'd never been examined by a medical expert. As a result of all of this evidence, the judge was satisfied that the claimant was in fact not involved in this accident and the judgment was set aside.
Keen to see justice served and to recoup costs, Matt set his sights on the lawyers and medical expert who had facilitated these claims. He thought they should be the ones paying out.
This matter went to a final hearing before a judge, in which the judge found in our favour and ordered that the claimant solicitor and the medical expert pay us an initial payment of £6,000 towards our costs, and that the final payment that would be owed to us was in the sum of £30,000.
But the solicitors were in no position to pay out because by this point, the firm had been shut down following an investigation by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. The GP expert is being pursued for the costs, and any other payment will now need to come from the solicitors' insurers, not from the law firm itself. Matt is disappointed that the lawyers and doctor involved in this case fell short of their professional duty.
This case shows a lack of integrity and professionalism from the solicitors, but unfortunately this was a behaviour we'd come to expect from this particular firm. In terms of the GP, they are supposed to be independent and provide evidence, and their duty is to the court. However, unfortunately, given the financial gain they can make in the insurance market, they can lose their objectivity.
Another shocking case of deception and a timely reminder that we all need to remain vigilant to the scourge of insurance fraud. From chancers exaggerating injury to criminal gangs engineering crashes for cash, these tricksters hit us all in the pocket. Every year, insurers lose millions to these scams, and it's you, the policyholder, who ends up paying the price in hikes to your premiums. But the sheer number of thieves caught in the act sends a clear message to anyone thinking about cheating the system. They claimed, but now they're shamed.